Hi, Sylvain.
Hi, Sylvain.
My name is Megan.
And I'm Jane. We are two members of the Dining Directors. As you saw in our proposal, our channel is dedicated to reviewing restaurants in Montreal.
Our other team members are Sanya, Elizabeth, and Saida.
They are not here today for reasons that we will explain later as we go through the process of putting together this project.
Basically, the idea behind Dining Directors is that we wanted to create a YouTube channel that would review and recommend restaurants around Montreal for tourists visiting the city who had really specific ideas for the dining experiences that they wanted. And we felt that there was a gap in the market of other YouTube channels because they didn't provide honest reviews from people who live in the city and who eat out all the time.
Exactly. Initially, two of our members, Rajul, actually not just one of our members, Rajul, it was his first time in Montreal and he hasn't really experienced the restaurant. So even in the early stages, we were gonna give him information for him to go forward, give him more knowledge about Montreal.
And even the team we have now, we ended up with myself. I'm from Toronto. I'm new to this city, but I've lived here for a little bit. Sanya is from India, and then Saida is from Mexico. So we kind of had a good balance of people who were from Montreal and who were also coming into the city. So we got to have people talk about what the staple restaurants were in Montreal, and for us coming in, it was a great way to try new restaurants and judge them.
And even for myself, I've been in the city for about 10 years. I like to call myself a connoisseur, but going through this project, I realized that I don't know a lot. And that when you're going to restaurants for a project rather than for pleasure, it's different. And we're gonna go ahead and tell you what we learned during this project.
So I think our original idea going into this project was that we were probably going to review more restaurants than we ended up reviewing. I think on further inspection, we kind of realized that it's actually a lot of work to go around the city and travel to each restaurant and to pay to go to these restaurants, because a lot of these restaurants, they won't let you film inside the restaurant if you're not a paying customer. Obviously, if you just walk in and start taking footage, they ask you to stop and not use that footage. So what we decided to do was, there was 4 categories. We had themed restaurants, romantic restaurants, kid-friendly restaurants, and cheap restaurants.
There you go.
We reviewed 3 restaurants from each category.
Initially, when we were selecting the criteria of what makes a good restaurant, we listed a lot of criteria we had based on Wi-Fi, based on parking, proximity to metro,
payment options, whether they took different credit cards,
service, and this is just to name a few. At the end, we just went with good or bad. Why? Because of the time. Our first obstacle was time. We had 6 weeks to put together this project, and keep in mind that we didn't know each other. We had to figure out what kind of personalities we had,
what schedules everybody had.
Exactly.
We had some people working full-time, some people working part-time, some people just working as students. So it was really important that we communicated with each other a lot about our different time constraints, so that when we were together or when we did have time to focus on our parts, that we were sticking to the timeline that we had set out.
Absolutely, and to facilitate this process, what we did is that we looked at our individual strengths. We had Elizabeth, who was in charge of production, and she has filming experience, so already off the bat, we were good with that. Then we had Megan here, who came into the team 2 weeks later, and she was strong with writing. She had a good idea of how to structure things. She took over that role.
Good editing. And I think both Jane and myself, we're better at talking, and I think we communicate ourselves very well on a verbal level, whereas the other members of our team prefer to be more behind the camera and doing the work behind the scenes.
And one of our team members, I'll do a special mention here, Saida. She is a mom, and she sort of oversaw the execution. She kept us in check.
Kept us in line.
Yes, and as she's a mother, she had a child, and she was perfect to do the family restaurant. So that was a good advantage there.
And then Sanya was really great at editing, and she was really good at designing and using different digital editing and design programs that we were not familiar with. Elizabeth had access to a good quality camera, not this one right now, but for our videos that you'll see, filmed with her camera, and that was great because we are not very technically savvy. So it was great to have somebody with that knowledge and have a good understanding of the editing process. So that helped us when we were filming. And then you, of course, I'll speak about you. I think you're an excellent writer as well. You have a great presence on camera and you speak very clearly and with a lot of enthusiasm. I think that's something that we need on the camera front.
So does Megan. I wouldn't be able to do this without her because she has a way of structuring things and making sure that what we're saying makes sense
Yeah.
and that it flows. So it's great to have her on board as well. And I'll add this, when we're doing our project plan proposal, I had a draft written out for 2 weeks. And nobody had any edits or any feedback to give me until she came on board, fixed that beautiful intro paragraph splendidly.
In terms of communication as a part of project management, it's great when there's a good balance between people who speak up for what they think should be changed and also know when to take the back seat and when to let people just do their job. So I think the 5 of us communicated really well. And then we all leaned on each other for our different strengths and then let people shine when we had our own weaknesses.
To communicate amongst ourselves, initially we used Google Drive, Google Documents, and then we decided that it would be much easier to do it on Facebook Messenger because we're all millennials and we respond well to it.
And that's how we communicated with our schedulers too.
Even right now, as we're speaking, we're getting messages from the other members giving us feedback. So they're here in spirit while we're here in person.
So let's talk about maybe some things that went wrong in our process or just obstacles that we ran into.
Yes.
So one of them I mentioned a bit earlier, it's that not all restaurants allowed us to film in their interiors or their food. I mean, it depends on the restaurant, obviously, and it totally depends on the service staff. I think we took a route where we didn't go out of our way to ask if we could film in there. I think when we were eating at a restaurant, so as I said before, there was 4 different categories of restaurants, and for each category, we visited 3 of those restaurants. We ate at one of those restaurants. So obviously for budget constraints, we're not going to eat at every single restaurant. That would just be very expensive for us. We decided to eat at one restaurant, and then we could obviously film our food, film the interior of the restaurant. But for those other restaurants that we couldn't afford to eat at, we just had to say, you know what, we're going to have to film outside, and that's just going to have to be good enough.
I sort of played on it because one of the restaurants we did in romantic category was Holder, and I'm very familiar with that restaurant because it is my favorite restaurant.
Yeah.
And I took advantage of the fact that the staff knew me and I knew that they would be very open to me filming there. They even give me a free drink.
Yeah. Whereas if I went there and I'd never been there before, they probably wouldn't have been as allowing of me to film there because I wasn't a regular. So that was definitely an advantage that we used.
We were, of course, thinking about the restaurant employees and the staff, but there was also the other stakeholders, the people who were there to eat. Not everybody wants to be filmed. We didn't want to catch any of their faces or their bodies on camera. We didn't want to run into trouble. So we did have a plan that if we ran into any trouble, we would not force the situation.
Definitely.
We would abort mission.
That's also true because every restaurant is so different. I know Sonia, when she went to go visit Pampai, she went there and she wasn't planning on eating there, but she was filming, and the staff were so helpful and so accommodating and said, oh, film this, I'm bringing out this food, film this food, or you know, they were so welcoming of even if she wasn't paying. And then she also said that patrons who were eating there said, oh yeah, you can film my food, whereas my category was romantic restaurants and it was a bit more fancy, and people obviously aren't as allowing of a complete stranger to film their food. So I think it totally depended on the restaurant, depended on the kind of people. But I think all in all, we got some great footage. We got to eat some great meals.
And when we took on this project, we went to class and we were told to do a YouTube channel, and we didn't really understand the full scope of the project. It's really when we started to sit down and put everything in a timeline of what we had to do and when. We knew that we had to respect that schedule because we had 6 weeks. By week 3, we were already behind because, yes, we wanted to start filming, you and me speaking, on week 4, but then the scripts weren't ready. So when it came to filming, we sort of had to fly off the seat of our pants. So we learned that there could have been a bit more preparation on that front, but we did manage. We took the time necessary and we got it done. So we're all very proud of ourselves and pleasantly surprised that we pulled it off.
And I think looking back, something that we talked about is that as good as we are at being able to communicate on camera, this isn't something I've done before, this isn't something you've done before. So I think when we first sat down to do filming, we had to get a few giggles out and we had to feel comfortable and feel more comfortable with the information that we were communicating. So that was some time that we hadn't accounted for. So looking back, we should have rehearsed a bit more before we actually got to filming. But you live and learn, and now we know for next time.
Okay, well, that about wraps it up. Thank you, Sylvain. We were the dining directors. We hope that we've given you some insight about the Montreal restaurants and that we've given you an insight about how we put this project together. My name is Jane.
My name is Megan. Our other group members are Sanya, Elizabeth, and Saida. We hope that you click along to our other videos and enjoy at the restaurants of Montreal. Bye.
Bye.